Alright, so we need to talk about Pendulum summoning and all of the new ruling changes coming to the OCG, because some of this stuff I assume you'll be getting in the TCG later on in the year. These are some really big changes, especially for those of you in OCG land over there. So, first off, before we even get into Pendulum summoning, going first in the OCG is no longer good, because you no longer get to draw on your first turn. Now, you might say that this is bad. You might say that this is good. If you have a current understanding of Yu-Gi-Oh!, going first puts you at such a good resourceful advantage. Now, going second gives you the ability to draw the card, but the thing is, going first now, one of the major flaws that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has always had is, you know, that set 5, summon big monster protection stuff, is now set 4, and have big monster on the board. This is actually very unique, because you can now use your 6 card to overpower your opponent and break their setup turn 1, which is something that this game has needed for quite some time. So it's definitely the first major ruling change. The second major ruling change is both players can now have a field spell on the board. So if you're both playing Dark World, you can both be running your field spells simultaneously. This is very different than what we have had done to us in the past. This is actually very interesting, because I like the fact that Field Spell could take over Field Spell and it could shut down other decks that relied on their Field Spells, but now we no longer have that. Also, text on official card game cards is made easier to read. Also note, you can note that cards from the new starter deck have their effects numbered. And for the OCG, these rulings will be taking place on March 21st. Right, so these are basically the first look at the new Pendulum monsters. There are things that I will discuss here, but first we're going to look at these so you guys can be confused. Actually, come back to these. We're going to scroll down here and look at the new field. Basically, the dual zone field has been updated. As you guys can see, we now have a pendulum column on the left between the field spell and the extra deck, and over here on the right between the deck and the graveyard, there's going to be the left trigger and the right trigger, as I'm going to refer to them. So basically, pendulum summoning is going to work like this. There are going to be 2 pendulum zones on the field. These new pendulum monsters with scales on the left and right, they indicate the red and blue things. So let's scroll back up here. You can see your left scale here and your right scale here, which are very nice. I like the fact that they're also now monster spells, as we can say here. So next up, you can place them in the pendulum zones, and if they do, they become spells instead of monsters. So basically, you can enjoy the beauty of 7 spell trap card zones. The first question that we actually have here is, if I play level 5 pendulum monsters in this zone, do I have to tribute for them? And we're still trying to figure that out, because we're not too sure. Once you have 1 pendulum monster in each zone, you can perform a pendulum summon. Basically, if the scales are 1 and 8, your pendulum becomes 2 through 7. In this turn, you can pendulum summon. You can special summon any number of monsters from your hand, and face up pendulum monsters from your extra deck that are levels 2 through 7. And you can only do this 1 time. So you can't summon something, draw some, and then summon again in the same turn. Basically, what we're looking at here is we're not sure on the exact number of monsters that you can summon out through the pendulum, if it's any number or if the number has to add up to what is in your pendulum. But if you can just like ultimate offering out everything, it's kind of interesting. So also, when pendulum monsters die, you can play them face up in your extra deck. Also, when you perform a pendulum summon, you can summon 1 of them from your extra deck. So when a pendulum monster dies, good news, you get to beam it back out from the extra deck. So general rulings, we're not quite sure on some of the little stuff here, but some of the new support up here. These are the first 2 pendulum monsters. Basically, his spell effect is if a Pendulum monster battles, your opponent cannot activate spell cards until the end of the damage step. If your other Pendulum zone does not have a Makushi eyes or an odd eyes, this card's Pendulum scale becomes 4. Monster effects. Once per turn, when a Pendulum monster you control is returned to your hand by your opponent's card, you can special summon one monster at the same level from your hand. So, interesting dual effects. So, that is the spell effect. The next one is Chronomancy Magician. His spell effect is if you control no monsters, you can activate this effect. If your Pendulum monster battles, your opponent can activate trap cards until the end of the damage step. If you have a Majuchi card or an Odd Eyes in your Pendulum zone, this card's Pendulum scale becomes 4. And its monster effect. When this card in your monster zone, once per turn, cards in your Pendulum zone cannot be destroyed by your opponent's cards. So, Pendulum zone protection. For these being the first two, they're not the best, but I'm also curious to know if you could move monsters from the Pendulum zone into the monster card zone, or how that's going to work. We're not clear on that just yet. Just a little bit more support here for Pendulum Summoning. When this card is Pendulum Summoned, you can target one card in the field, return it to the owner's hand. You can only use the effect of Lee's weapon once per turn. This card can attack your opponent directly. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can target one dragon, spellcaster, warrior type monster in your graveyard, add that monster to your hand, if only he was level 4. The last one, I believe, when this card is normal summon, you can activate this effect. Special summon one level 4 or lower normal monster from your hand. 2, while this card is in your monster card zone, your monsters gain 100 attack and defense. So, not bad. But for the Pendulum Summoning, I'm kind of curious to know some of the finer points here. But it's interesting to know that our new monsters are dual spells and dual traps. Or yeah, dual spells and dual monsters. Very interesting to see how more of these guys are going to look. So, but guys, that is Pendulum Summoning and some really, really interesting new rules with the field spells and the drawing thing in the OCG. So guys, leave a comment down below and tell me what you guys think. MCohl40 out.